It's my pleasure to introduce Omer Mozzafar, who's going to be the moderator for this panel. He's a professor of religion at the University of Chicago, and he's one of Roger's Far Flung Correspondents, even though he lives in Chicago. He's from Pakistan, and it's my pleasure to turn the panel over to Omer.
Thank you very much for that. A very quick question, a show of hands. Who was here last year? Okay, so we don't have anything else to talk about. Okay. I was hoping somebody would not raise their hand. So, first and foremost, let's take a moment to introduce our esteemed panelists. Let's start all the way from the far end. Anath, please tell us about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do? Anything you think we should know?
Well, I'm not as near flung as you, but I am less far flung than some of the other folks. I live in Los Angeles, but I'm a native of Illinois. So I grew up around Peoria, so this is home country for me. It's really nice to be back here. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you that the last time I was here, which will enable you to know my age, was May 1970. For the big anti-war demonstration, which I think was on the Quad. So it's a long time ago. I got to this panel kind of by way of two people, well-known people, one of whom is Roger and another of whom is, well, I got to Roger because of two well-known people. A talk show host in Denver named Alan Berg, whose show I produced, and then he was murdered by neo-Nazis 9 months later. Long story right there. I ended up being hired by Oliver Stone as his technical advisor on a movie called Talk Radio 4.5 years later, which was partly about Alan Berg. So in contacting Roger for some permission to use a quote, we began to communicate, and he saw a piece I'd written for the Denver Post about working with Oliver on the Alan Berg Talk Radio, Eric Bogosian story, and that's where I started to do some writing for him, which is a thrill.
Okay, fantastic. Well, welcome aboard. Olivia, please tell us about yourself. Where you're from. Tell us about what you do.
Thank you. I'm from Montreal. And I'm a communications manager for a company called Spatial Audio, and who they are, well, let's just say I work in radio and software. I'm here today because Roger Ebert started using Twitter roughly a year ago.
He uses Twitter?
Well, actually, it's probably more like a year and a half ago. And I didn't, he's such a good sport. I'd written on my own Twitter account the night before something, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls had been on TV, and I actually wildly enjoyed it. And I wrote, the only thing Beyond the Valley of the Dolls doesn't need is more cowbell. And, and it pleased Roger. And, I guess from there we corresponded, and he allowed me to experiment with some writing for the Far Flung Correspondents blog, as I had a blog of my own. And I've been a huge cinema buff since my early days in university, when I had to buy I took a film as art class and had to buy a textbook by Kristen Thompson and David Bordwell, who introduced me to a lot of the language that I know in cinema. So yeah, that about wraps it up for me.
Okay, fantastic. Gerardo, tell us about yourself.
Hello, my name is Gerardo. I've been following Roger from the mid-1980s, more or less, through the Siskel and Ebert show, and also his written reviews on the yearbooks that I used to buy, which immediately when I saw them struck me as fantastically written. Years later, the internet came along, and it really was a big help because a figure that to me, like Roger, that seemed so far away, suddenly became as close as hitting a button. And there I sent him my first glossary suggestion for his little movie book. And he's been publishing me for the last 10 years, which is something that I miss very much to me. And when the FFC Far Flung Correspondents group came along, he thought of me for this. And to me, it's been a privilege being able to work with one of the handful of people who have shaped the way I see something as meaningful to me as the movies.
Very nice. So we have...
Oh, excuse me, Mexico City.
It's from Mexico City.
Yes.
So we have Anath from LA, who's been involved in the work behind the scenes. We have Olivia, who aside from her love for Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, has been essaying on movies. We have Gerardo, who's connected especially with us through the internet, I mean, in addition to the other blogs, and he is also one of our returning correspondents. Krishna.
Hi,
Krishna is the youngest member of the panel, in case you couldn't tell. And he is a fellow subcontinent member. Tell us about yourself, Krishna.
Hi, my name is Krishna Shenoi. I'm from India. I live in Dubai, UAE. I'm very nervous, so. Anyways, I used to watch Steven Spielberg movies, which my mom introduced to me. And
your mom is here. Mom,
yeah, my mother's there. Her name is Sandhya
There's
Shenoi.
Mom. Hello,
And
Mom.
that's
Let's
my
give her a round of
sister,
applause.
Sushmita Shenoi.
Okay.
Yeah. So I used to watch his movies, and I was in love with Ray Harryhausen's special effects, and so all these things like fed my imagination as a child, and I started making special effects videos, and I started writing about movies. And the only movie reviews that I used to read were Roger Ebert's. I don't know why. I think when you type movie criticism on Google, I think the third thing that comes up is Roger Ebert. So that's how I found out about him. And I've been reading his stuff for 6 years. So one day when he commented on my blog saying, I like your mind and style, send me an email, I need to talk to you about something. I couldn't believe it. I was like really, really shocked. And he invited me to be one of his correspondents, and it's really something. And when I met him in Chicago at his place, it was like an out-of-body experience, just seeing him over there. And I was really, really happy, and he means a lot to me, and it's really awesome being here. It's my first time at the Ebertfest, obviously. So.
Fantastic. So from India, planted into Dubai, and now here you are in the Midwest. Welcome. Michael Mirasol from all over Southeast Asia. Tell us about yourself.
Hi, my name is Michael Mirasol, and this is my second Ebertfest. I'm from the Philippines. I currently reside in Malaysia, but I work as an IT consultant, so that requires me to travel a lot through Southeast Asia, among other places. And I've been a fan of Roger's work for about 17 years, from TV all the way to his journal entries. The first time I heard about Roger was when I kept on renting laser discs, and every blurb seemed to contain his name. Yeah. And the internet came around. I searched for his reviews, and I read them, and if I could find a way to write to him, I would. I wrote through him through his blogs, through his email addresses, and next thing you know, he checks out some of my writings, and around last year, he invited me to come to Ebertfest, and like Krishna, it was a surreal moment. And well, he's an inspiration to me, and anything I can do to help him out to promote Ebertfest and whatever he loves, that's what I'll do.
Oh, fantastic. And the better halves of a few of our participants are here. Olivia, Gerardo, and Michael, could you also raise your hands if you're in this room, so we can all put our attention on you?
Monica, raise your hand.
Which leads us into our friend, the smooth operator.
Yes, Pablo.
Ali Arikan from Istanbul.
Hello, my name is Ali Arikan. I'm from Istanbul, Turkey. I was born in Ankara, but I live in Istanbul now. I am the chief film critic for Dipnot TV, which is a Turkish news portal. And I also write for The House Next Door, which is a New York-based blog, and the official blog of Slant Magazine, as well as a whole bunch of other places, including my now moribund blog as well, Cerebral Mastication. I have been a friend of Roger's, and I've been proud to call myself a friend of Roger's for the past 11, 12 years when we first started communicating about a whole bunch of films, but mostly including Coppola and Lumet, interestingly enough. And in the past, about 3 years ago, when Roger started writing his blog, I started commenting on it, as did most other people. And it was about 2 years ago that he contacted a whole bunch of us, many of the people around this table, including yours truly, and asked whether we'd like to be a part of this new experiment that he was putting on, which turned out to be the Far Flung Correspondents. And I jumped at the chance. And it was absolutely and utterly, it's been a fantastic experience. This is my second Ebertfest. I loved it last year. I'm loving it so far this year. It's so good to be back, to see old friends and you know, starting to make new ones. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Roger, for having me.
Okay.
And Nate.
Fantastic. And a new member of the correspondence, Pablo. Pablo, tell us about yourself.
My name is Pablo. I'm from Brazil. I've been a film critic since 1994, and a film lover since I was a kid. In Brazil, we had this, during the afternoons, we would have on open TV films like those directed and starred by Jerry Lewis, and that's how I got bitten by the film bug. When I was about 13, 14 years old, my uncle bought me a book by Pauline Kael, and someone else gave me a CD, which was called, I believe it was Cinemania. I'm not sure that's the name.
It is,
yeah. And there was a lot of reviews by Roger Ebert. That's how I came to know him. And every film I watched, I came back to the CD and I read his review. And then I started realizing there is much, much more to movies than the surface. And I became very interested in watching films in a different way. And then, of course, I decided to be a doctor. And I went to medical school. And I quit to be a film critic because I wanted to be very rich. Last year, I wrote a piece on Frantic by Roman Polanski for Movie City News. And I was away, I was not in my city, I was visiting my sister, and then I was checking Twitter because I'm addicted to it.
He's been tweeting while we've been speaking.
Yeah, several times. For my great surprise, suddenly it came up a tweet from Ebert recommending my piece on Frantic, out of the blue. I almost fainted. I mean, he's one of my main inspirations on becoming a film critic. And I wrote at the time that was like a teenager boy who likes to write poems, and then this great musician that he loves reads one of his poems and say, oh, it's kind of good. I was very, very touched. And then the invitation to become a Far Flung Correspondent, I think I'm the newest one, not the youngest one, but the newest one. And it's been unbelievable, a great, great pleasure.
Okay, very nice. And you've heard my story last year. I first discovered Ebert and Siskel on Sesame Street. And then from there, when I was a college student, I signed up for film study with Roger Ebert and took a course on this guy I'd never heard of, Luis Buñuel. And then also enjoyed Roger Ebert's conversations at Ed DeBevick's after many of those classes. But this is this year's Far Flung Correspondents group, and the title of our panel is International Perspectives on Film Criticism. Let's start with Pablo. So you are a film critic in Brazil. Ebert says that you are one of the most respected film critics in Brazil, so we are honored to have you with us. We don't have too many film critics in Chicago, so tell us, what is it like? What is the film critic community like in Brazil? Is it a whole population? Do you talk to each other? Do you all hate each other?
No, well, when I first began, I began writing for the internet. So it was back in 1997. So it was a lot of prejudice against people who wrote for the internet. I couldn't even get to press screenings. Nowadays, if you have a Twitter account, you can go to anything. But we have many great film critics. Many of them were, and still are, inspirations for me. You probably won't know their names, but I would like to mention them so you can. For instance, we have this guy called Luis Carlos Merten, which he has something like 40 years of film criticism in his past. And Rubens Edvaldo Filho, which is probably the best known film critic in Brazil because he's on TV all the time. He during the Oscar, he covers the ceremony. And I started on the internet. So it's funny when you say if we like each other, if we fight all the time. I have great friends amongst other film critics. And obviously there's those little, let's say, factions. Okay. Like people who think that film criticism is one thing, and people who think it's another thing. So there's some back and forth. But I think it's a great community, and the interest of our readers it's something that really enchants me, because people really look for film reviews online, and they want to learn more. And when I was starting, if I wanted to learn more about film, I would have to buy a book, or I would have to, it was much more complicated. Nowadays, you just go online and you find reviews and you start studying film language, film theory, and I think that's something that I think is very hopeful. If everybody starts studying film, I believe it would be much better for everyone who loves movies.
Very nice. Ali, how about in Turkey? I know that you write reviews in Turkish as well as English. What is the film criticism community like in Turkey?
Well, I wouldn't call myself a part of the Turkish film criticism community. I would more classify myself with the more international, especially New York-based people, and because my writing style and the things that I am interested in is more fitting to the way film is talked about in this country or in England. In Turkey, obviously, not to disparage anyone, but the film criticism over there is the way that this country, the way it used to be in this country, before the likes of Pauline Kael, I suppose. Well, even going back to Mozzafar, there was decent film criticism in this country, but still, it was more descriptive rather than interpretive.
Okay, what is the difference between the two?
Well, descriptive is someone saying, right, okay, Metropolis is a science fiction film made in 1927, and there's this woman who dances the dance of the seven veils, and people lust after her. That's one way of saying it. And then and then asking, I'm not disparaging it at all. It's one way of doing film criticism and letting people actually know it for themselves, seeing for themselves and going and experiencing it. Another way is interpreting this. And because I was educated in England and I went to an English school in Germany, I've always liked that approach towards literature and towards the arts, towards that, you give the sort of interpretation that you see, and then people can agree or disagree and argue with it. So film criticism, as it is still going very strong, is very strong in Turkey. However, major media film criticism, I would say, is descriptive, whereas more academic writing in Turkey is interpretive. But that is a problem. It is academic. It's not really entertaining per se. It's very academic, and you do have journals that are very important journals, but as I said, once and for all, it's not necessarily something that you can go back every day to read it. When it comes to the internet, I think the internet has opened a new approach to film criticism, not just in the United States and the rest of the world, but also in Turkey. And this Dipnot, my new gig for the past 6 months or so as Dipnot, that's been very good because my editor doesn't care about what I write and how I write it, and encourages me to do the stuff that I do in my writing in English in Turkish. So we're introducing something and hoping that it sticks in Turkey and in Istanbul.
So you're trying to shift the discourse to
I am indeed.
interpretive.
Yes.
Absolutely. Knowing you probably can. If
Thank you.
Already. Very nice. Michael, tell us about the community of critics in Southeast Asia.
Well, I can't really speak for most of Southeast Asia, but in the Philippines, my home country, I feel there's a great divide among film critics. Basically, you can split them among the mainstream and those in part-time or independent film critics who don't write for a living. You have to understand this is because in the Philippines, it's a third world country, and arts is a low priority. So when most of the masses who aren't very learned and they go to find out more about the movie, they just want something simple, and they get that from the mainstream media, mostly print media. And most of these newspapers or media outlets, they influence some of the mainstream critics to print favorable reviews. So most of the mainstream critics, they're usually swayed by whatever favors the distributors can shower on them. But the part-time film critics, the independent film critics, bloggers who write in the Philippines, those are the ones really worth reading, and they far outnumber those in the mainstream. And it's kind of sad because I'm among the independent film critics. We don't get paid for what we do, which far outnumber the guys in the mainstream. And yet, well, if you can check for yourself, it's far more learned. That's my opinion. It's far more learned in the independent scene. I know a lot of independent film critics who, in their day jobs, are IT consultants, are lawyers, are actually struggling independent filmmakers who are willing to review the worthwhile films. So that's how it is in the Philippines. There's a great divide. But the youth is starting to turn to the independent film critics because of social networks like Twitter and Facebook. So those young people who are hungry for just the same old churned out film criticism from the mainstream, where it just seems so descriptive, like Ali says, or influenced, they seek out the independent people and those young people who are the majority in the Philippines, but poor, they're starting to learn more about film. It's a battle. It's a battle between the two sides. Yeah.
And it's a battle between the mainstream critics versus the bloggers. But it seems that you're saying that as the younger generation is growing, they're more interested in the bloggers because they seem to be more intellectually honest.
Yeah, the bloggers, the independent people, they tend to be more young. They tend to be more connected with Western film critics like Roger, because of social networks, and they're closer because of these social networks. Mainstream critics tend to be hyper-competitive and hardly ever cite each other when they write their own pieces.
Okay, sure, absolutely. Well, let's talk more about blogging. Krishna, you are from India. You're from Dubai. Now, when we think of Dubai, we think of the mile-high buildings. And all this rapid development. What's your experience like in terms of the film industry in general in Dubai?
There isn't much of a film industry in Dubai.
There isn't much.
Yeah, I mean they hardly ever make movies, and if they do, it's very rare. So the thing is, they mainly go for Hollywood movies, and I think most of the Arab population, most of the people going for movies are the Arab males, and they go for blockbusters like Transformers and G.I. Joe and all those noisy movies. And basically, not the good movies.
I think Roger Ebert especially liked Transformers too, right? You know, something like that. Yeah.
I think that's the first time I communicated with him. I made a video which was basically shooting at Transformers, and so he saw that. Yeah. Anyways, the thing is, that's why the mainstream movies, the less good movies, are the ones that do well in Dubai. Yeah.
Okay. And so people just want the big popcorn movies.
Yeah, just the popcorn movies where, they sit with their mobiles and watch the movies. They're not really looking at the screen. And if you go for the screening with a lot of Arab people, there's a lot of noise throughout the movies. And
people are talking to the screen.
Yeah,
huh?
people talking to the screen, people walking out and in when they want. It's not like Ebertfest yesterday and day before. I mean, yesterday, the last two movies.
So everybody was completely silent at Ebertfest?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about Gerardo and Monica, but everybody else was very silent.
No, it's not the silence, it's that they're watching the movie and they're experiencing it, like all of them as a whole, watching the movie and enjoying it for what it is. That never happens in Dubai.
Okay, so it's just, at most, it seems like it's just an escape. There isn't as, this deep engagement with the movies.
Exactly.
Can you tell us a little bit about Bollywood?
Okay, the thing about Bollywood is there's no, again, in India, there's no film criticism as such because no one takes film critics seriously.
Okay.
See, in India, all they want is, you've got your over-the-top action scenes and your drama, like very, very high drama. Have any of you seen Bollywood movies?
Have you ever seen a Bollywood movie?
Yeah, so you must know what it's like. Yeah, melodrama, that's it. And it's all over the top and it's not realistic, and if you watch 10 movies, you'll realize you're seeing the same things again and again. Okay. So, and people enjoy it that way. And I don't think any of them look at film critics for anything. I don't even think there's many film critics who review Indian movies seriously. I think if anyone wants quality cinema in India, they go for the Hollywood movies.
Okay,
that's how it works out.
Right. So the Bollywood movies themselves tend to be very much, as you said, over the top. Yeah. You'll have the action sequences. There's this super heightened soap opera drama, usually involving some taboo love, and then you'll have the musical numbers, right?
Yeah.
I love you, and then it starts raining, and then we start dancing together. Okay.
But I must say that
just like in real life.
Exactly. I'm sure this is what Krishna's life is like at home in Dubai. Yeah.
But I think they're slowly breaking out of it to some extent. Like there is a few good Hindi movies that are, before if there were any art films, they weren't really, they wouldn't surface. They would remain underground and no one would know about them. But now I think slowly through the internet, people are coming to know about these movies, and they're not doing commercially as well as the other ones, but they're catching up. And
okay, they are beginning to catch up. So there is an audience there among the 2 billion Bollywood followers throughout the world. Okay.
Yeah, and there's a few mainstream actors who are trying to make movies like that. Like Aamir Khan, you might have heard of him from Lagan.
Aamir Khan, who's the star of Lagan.
Yeah, so he's making high-budget movies, but a little more realistic and a little more modernized.
And very, very socially conscious.
Yeah, very socially conscious.
Absolutely, very nice. Gerardo, you told us a bit last year. Tell us again today the type of movies that people watch in Mexico City in particular, or Mexico in general. I mean, do they just watch American movies? Is there an industry of Mexican movies that people watch? How would you describe this?
Actually, Mexicans see any kind of movie. They'll go see anything.
Mm-hmm.
But film criticism really isn't paid much attention to by the newspapers. Like my local newspaper will have many political columnists, but I don't know the name of their film critic. He's not a columnist. He's just a guy who takes the opinion of many newspapers and Roger Ebert. But as a columnist, the position I couldn't tell you what's the most important film critic in Mexico.
I mean, they're not Far Flung Correspondents like yourself, so why pay attention to them, right?
Exactly.
Kidding, my friend.
What's funny is that even some years ago, in the 1990s, our Mexican television created a show similar to the Siskel and Ebert, but they had the idea that what made the show special was their looks, so they got lookalikes. There was like a Mexican Gene and a Mexican Roger.
Mexican Gene.
And the Mexican Roger, I remember only seeing him before giving the weather in another news show.
Okay, very, very nice. Sure. Olivia, you come from Canada. Yeah, I've heard of that
we make Canadiana.
Tell us, is there an industry or a community of film critics in Canada?
Huge, but I want to differentiate between the Canadian film industry and the Quebecois film industry.
Okay.
Montreal is in the province of Quebec, and it's mostly a French-speaking province, and it has its own niche, its own film industry, its own filmmakers. Some of them have made movies that are well known to a lot of people outside of Canada, like Denis Arikan, who made the beautiful Le déclin de l'Empire américain, or the decline of the American Empire, I think it was in English, I don't remember. And The Barbarian Invasions, its sequel. And Incendie, I'm really sorry, I don't know the title in English, but it was nominated this year at the Oscars as a foreign movie, which is odd because it's from Canada. But one thing that I want to point out about Montreal in particular is, criticism there feels less like criticism and more like arts coverage. And the reason I say this is because being a starving artist in Montreal is a perfectly viable way of life. The rent isn't too expensive, and the local newspapers, which are both, the artistic rags and the legitimate newspapers with Conrad Black behind them or something like that, they put so much weight on the local art scene, whether it's inviting films from abroad or from other places, or it's simply to promote its own industry. There are countless film festivals in Montreal. Our biggest one is also the one that's like the least important, which is the International Film Festival. It would be the Montreal equivalent of the Toronto Film Festival, but it hardly gets any attention at all because people much prefer the International Festival of Film on Arts, which is, it either consists of art films or documentaries about artists. There's the Fantasia Film Festival, which is mostly Asian science fiction and Quebec horror by independent filmmakers. At some point, there was an 8mm film festival, which I think took place in some guy's living room. And it's and these are things that are really interesting to the community in general in Montreal. But then you also have stuff that's more mainstream. And when I say mainstream, I mean American movies dubbed in French. And there's a huge, huge fan base for that. And then, of course, there's Quebec's own filmmaking industry, which has become a lot more mainstream and is sort of moving away. Well, I shouldn't say moving away, but it's certainly, there's still that Denis Arikan school, which is very expressive and artistic, and then there's stuff that's meant for a more general public. They've started producing romantic comedies, which is actually up until 2004 was kind of unheard of in Canada, so it's really it's interesting living in a place like Montreal because you're exposed to really so much and the openness that people have to it. I mean, it's not uncommon to have a friend call you up and say, I've got 2 tickets to go see a movie about this guy whose floor is entirely covered with pennies. Do you want to go see it? And then we do. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I hope that gives you a bit of a picture of the kind of climate that we're fortunate to have in Montreal and in Quebec as well. Because our existence there is so insular, we really we preserve and protect our little niche really, really well.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. So putting both yours and Gerardo's comes together, there's 2 different types of complete openness. Gerardo was saying that his fellow Mexicans will watch any kind of movie, every kind of movie. There's that type of openness, and then you have your type of openness that you described of people just welcoming all different types of lifestyles and conversations on film.
Absolutely.
Very nice. Anath, you're from Southern California. What is the experience of a film goer in Southern California?
Experience of a film goer. Oh, it's many things, so it's hard to answer that. There are so many parts to filmmaking and seeing films because they're made there, and they're made there on a lot of different levels. So I'm not sure if I can answer it
Well,
very well.
would you? I mean, you're also, you have this long history with the American Film Institute. Tell us about your involvement with the AFI.
Okay, I was there at the film school in the early 90s for about 3 years, and in fact wrote a piece for Roger's blog in February. It came out just before the Oscars because 3 of the people that had been in the school when I was there were nominated. So that whole experience was very interesting being at AFI because it's passionate people wanting to tell stories, and sometimes they succeed. I'm particularly interested in knowing why something gets made and then how it's done. And that tends to be what I like to write about for Roger's blog.
Well, let's discuss this point further. The movies that we choose to write about here. For example, Olivia, you had this wonderful essay on A Serious Man. How do you decide what to write about? Like, what is it that attracts you?
I mean, unfortunately, there's no structure for me personally. It just happens, I'll see something and it'll strike me. Some of the things I've written about, I've wanted to write about for a really long time, like Tous les matins du monde, which is my all-time favorite movie. And A Serious Man, I mean, the minute I saw it, I had to write something down. But, I mean, part of it is because I zeroed in on something which was folk tales and storytelling from that tradition, and I saw it in the movie, and it's something that happens to interest me. I'd written about fairy tales in another article, and I've always been interested in mythology, folklore, fairy tales, things like that, so it just struck me. But to be perfectly honest, there's no structure. I'm not really sure what the next piece is going to be about.
So it's you're waiting for the muse or that moment, and you
I hate to
decide
put
this
it that way, but that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Absolutely. Whereas Gerardo, your essays have been on these classic, iconic American movies. How do you decide what to write about?
Well, many subjects actually, but for example, there are the conversations that I have with friends about certain movies that we're always passionate about, and every time we see each other, we always talk about the same movie or about the same subject. Like, for example, last year I wrote about the remakes and also the CGI effects and the problem with them, or even something as maybe sounds trivial like the Star Wars movies. We always talk about the same thing, about what the problems with the prequels were. And it's wonderful to see those conversations that we repeat over and over again finally being able to be put in a site such as Rogers for the world to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So you do have these conversations about movies with friends. Would you say that that's common throughout Mexico? Do people talk about movies? Do they think about movies? What do you think?
Oh, all the time.
All the time, yeah.
And there are, of course, movies that I feel like perhaps people have forgotten them a bit. Like the wonderful film The Hustler with Paul Newman, which is one of the best films I've ever seen. Or maybe a little film that even though when it came out I haven't met my wife, but as soon as we met, we talked about Breaking Away, the little film about the cycling in the Indiana. And it's such a treasure that I thought many people haven't seen it. Because I know that for example, my nieces and nephews, I talk to them about it and they have no idea. They know all the Harry Potter and Justin Bieber and what you like.
Right. You like Justin Bieber, Monica? Okay, we have a recommendation here for the Justin Bieber movie.
So this is a great opportunity to bring those movies up and remind audiences about what they're missing.
Oh, so these classics that you think even the younger generation should watch.
Exactly.
Yeah, which brings us to the younger generation. Krishna, you've written some wonderful essays, for example, on Superman. And I think you had the letter to Robert Zemeckis, right? Yeah. How do you decide what to write about when you're sitting there in Dubai with all the wonderful different people from different environments? What do you pick, or how do you pick?
If I watch a movie and I think I have something to say about it, I go into Microsoft Word and start writing.
You just go into Word and just start writing away?
Yeah, and if I complete the article, I send it to Rozo.
Okay,
I don't really complete many articles.
Okay, very nice. So very simple and straightforward.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like Superman meant something to me because it was, I think the first time I realized that special effects can be used realistically in a movie to actually add to the story and not stand out, be a part of the story. So, and it was, I think I started my love for movies with Superman thanks to my mom who introduced it to me, because I think her brother showed it to her. So yeah, that's how I chose to write about Superman. Plus, I think that day I had just seen it on TV and I realized how awesome, amazing the movie is. So that's how I picked Superman. And Robert Zemeckis, because I was reading an article about Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I read some rumors that he's doing a sequel, which is a blend of motion capture 3D and hand-drawn animation, which I think is like a travesty or something. So that's when I began writing that article. So
you're making these.
It just comes up. It's not there's no conscious decision about it.
Okay, it just flows from you also. Now, Michael, you write about more than just movies, right? You are a very, very sharp critic of politics in your beloved country, the Philippines. You're a very sharp critic of Malaysia. What inspires you to write about the things that you write? And the point we're making here is that we're coming from all sorts of different backgrounds. Some of us are especially focused in film criticism, but all of us have these multifaceted backgrounds. What is this passion that drives you?
Well, it's something I've been trying to put my finger on for a while, because from what I've learned from Roger's writing is people don't not only appreciate you more or admire you more or respect your opinions more just because you limit your outlook solely to film. Sometimes you have to introduce a little bit of yourself into your work so that people can relate to you. And reading Roger's work throughout the years, basically I got a better idea of what he was like and what his thoughts on certain things were, whether it be about politics or world affairs or events happening in other countries. He would usually interject that in some of his reviews just to highlight a certain point. And I kind of admire that, so I tried to broaden my horizons, not just on film. And I just have this passion for learning more and more and more and wanting to read more. And I can't help but put my political beliefs, my morals into what I write or what I tweet. Mostly what I tweet. I'm sorry if I offend anybody here. I won't name any names or any organizations. But criticism, I don't like to limit it just to film. I think limiting yourself to just one aspect is kind of boring. You have to inject something a little bit and show a little bit of yourself, broaden your horizons. And I think the very fact that we're all here, that we've been invited from different countries, is a sign of that in Roger, that he wants to broaden our horizons. So as to what I like to write about, I've written about video games as art, but I don't want to go into that. Roger might get mad.
Should we take a poll? No. Okay, let's take a poll. Raise your hand if you believe that video games are art. Okay, so at the edges, we have a few people who raise their hands. Okay. Raise your hand if you believe that video games are not art.
It's okay.
Okay. So we'll wait for your response on your blog to this point.
Okay, so some people aren't voting.
Yeah, you cannot abstain. Absolutely.
Well, on that point, I mean, we all know Roger's point of view. Whether he's changed that or not, that's up to him. It doesn't, he's entitled to his opinion. But I grew up with films, and I grew up with video games, and there's a lot of similarities which I've written about in that blog, and I felt I had to make a stand for gamers everywhere, giving their point of view. But I do believe that there's some artistic element in that. And Roger, who really does appreciate the arts, I just wanted to really try and show it to him as best as I could. So that was my shot out there. And when I write, it's not only I want to describe what makes a film good. This is myself out there. I'm putting it out. My review is a part of me. It's out there, and it's out there forever. So that's my contribution. Yeah.
So this is I think a very, very important point that you're making here, that when we are engaged in film criticism, it's the person, it's Michael engaged in film criticism. And Michael, being a human with a life within the movies and outside of the movies, Michael is also engaging with politics, with questions of art, with all these big debates of the day. He is part of all this. We're going to come to Ali in a second, but Olivia, you wanted to make a point.
Yeah, well, two things. Firstly, having written something about video games as art as well, I almost regretted it because, unfortunately, doing something like that also opens the floodgates of people who have an opinion on games, which I'm not sure if it's more than the people who have an opinion about movies, but it feels like it is. And secondly, I think when it comes to criticism of any kind, I think the richer your background, it's something that's felt in the criticism. It's because your experience of any movie is down to your own experiences, and what you know, and where you know it from, and why you know it, and and I think that's what drives the criticism more than anything else, more than just sitting there and watching a movie. It's important to have a varied background and to have varied experiences. That's about it.
So the more rich of a background you have, the more the reader will then benefit with from the points that you're making. Ali, what type of responses do you get from your readers?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to mention, just because there's a third side to this.
Okay.
When it comes to video games as art, I am of the opinion, who cares?
Okay.
I couldn't give a toss. And people who are vociferous in either sort of opinion, I really don't care. Not everything in the world is another front in the Kulturkampf, calm down. This is the problem with internet. This is the problem with the internet, where everyone has, it's good obviously, but has strong opinions, and everything becomes an issue. And for me, it's just like, yeah, whatever. And because it was Michael's lovely prose, I obviously read his article. If it weren't for Michael, I wouldn't have read it. I don't care. And really, I mean, the thing is, I think when it comes to a whole bunch of things, especially film criticism, thank you, and especially film criticism, thank you. All of you, come on, touch me. Especially film criticism, I don't think that, there are a lot of people who woke up one morning and thought, right, you know what, today I'm going to be a film critic. And I think it is a serious issue. I think people should read, and people should watch a lot of films, people should enjoy the arts, and only then can you start making a contribution to the discourse that you mentioned as well, to the discourse in the world. And, for me, I've been writing more, obviously, because it's turned into a job now, for Dipnot more, but especially in my English writing, I am influenced and supported by many people, especially, friends that we don't have here this year, Jim Emerson, David Bordwell, I'd like to mention them, and my former editor, Matt Solozites, who is here, and other people like Keith Ulick and Dennis Cosalio. The way these people look at movies, they write about, I mean, there's meeting a deadline, a film is about to open on Friday, and you have to make sure that, you get a review out, but that's different from the pieces that you can write online, where you don't have word limits and you can just go off on one. Even when I do stuff like that, I have to make sure, I do make sure that it's at least original, that there's no point in going through the motions and writing about the same thing only in your own words that people have been talking about and people have been thinking about for years and years. Whenever I try to write something, whenever I try to do a feature piece, I want to make sure that it offers something original. And and coming back to your original question, the sort of feedback that I get from readers, over at the house and over at the house next door and over at at Roger's blog, we get a civil conversation going. The more you write, obviously, productivity begets inspiration. And Roger also says this, you find your muse while you're writing it, and the more you write, the more positive it gets, and that's great. Unfortunately, on Dipnot, you can leave anonymous comments, and most people do leave anonymous comments, and
those are the nicest comments. Right?
Those are the great, nicest comments. I get, wedding proposals, and people trying to get my number, and
those are actually Ali writing to himself. On the
absolutely, yes, and you writing to me.
It's me. It's me. It's actually me.
Yes.
Okay, but seriously,
but that's the sort of thing, and to be perfectly honest, in my approach to those sort of comments is something that my good friend, Glenn Kenny does as well. Was another favorite critic of mine, and someone who's an inspiration. If they try to hit you with something, if they pull a gun, if they pull a gun, you pull an officer, and that's it. I mean, I just go all the way back, and then they have to calm down. Mm-hmm. So that's the way I deal with them.
So it's an entertaining engagement.
It is very entertaining. This is it for film criticism. Just like anything to do with the arts, have to be entertaining. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have to make sure that people go there, read it, and it's great, and then they have to go back to their mundane lives, including yours truly. I've got a full-on day job, and I do this to have fun. Once it stops being fun, why do it?
Yeah, sure. Pablo, what type of conversations do you find having with your readership?
Well, it depends on the media. When I write about specific films, when I write reviews, I always try, like Ali said, I think it's very important not to go through the motions. It's important to add something to the conversation. So what interests me in film criticism is trying to teach something about film language. So because I think that most of viewers nowadays, they're so passive. They're like buying a feeling. I'm paying a ticket so you can make me cry or make me laugh or make me scared. Mm-hmm. And that really bothers me. What I really think is interesting is to cry, to laugh, and to feel scared, but also to understand how the filmmaker managed to make you feel that way. So that's what I try to do on my reviews, trying to deconstruct how the film worked. So I work on the film language.
My contact piece, for example. That was particularly incisive, and
like that. In that one, I had the opportunity to add images, so it could illustrate my points. So that's one of the things that I like to do. Those kind of I tend to write a lot. I talk too much, not here, but I talk too much and I write too much. So the kind of comments I have is people who didn't read the review because they say, oh, it's too long, I'm not even going to bother. But I realized that you gave it 1 star out of 5, so you suck, man. Okay.
So it's not that different than America.
Yeah, no, it's not. And the people who actually have they read the piece and they add to the conversation. Oh, I agreed with you, or I disagreed with you because of that and that and that. That's the beauty of film criticism, is having a discussion. I hate it when I read something and the guy just say, oh, the photography was beautiful. What do you mean it was beautiful? Why it was beautiful? You have to tell me more. And then if you tell me more, I'll be able to say, okay, I agree with you. Oh, no, I don't agree with you because of this and this and that. So that's one thing. The other thing is, in my personal blog, which is also associated to the website, I tend to write about things that interested me aside of film. I also write about films, but not only that. So I write about politics. We had a very rough election in Brazil last year. I write about the homosexuality cause, which I think is a very important cause nowadays, because racism, and if you make a racist comment, everybody around will go, ooh, no, you don't do that, no. But if you make a gay joke, everybody goes, ha, yeah, that guy is funny. So that's something that really is important to me. And those comments, they are much more virulent People really, really get nervous, and they call me names, and I cry, and I'm just kidding. And there is Twitter. Twitter is another game altogether, because on Twitter, you just say something nasty, and you send it, and you forget you ever said that. So it's very common that sometimes one of my readers, I post something, and the guy says, "You suck," or "I hate you," and 2 days later, that same person says, "Oh, could you help me with something?" And you go like, "What? You were calling me names 2 days ago," because the person forgot. So, but I didn't, because I hold grudges.
Very nice.
So
let us all beware of saying anything nasty to Pablo in the next few days.
So but I think the discussion is that it's something that really, really interests me. You know, I love reading arguments of people who disagree with me. If they present any arguments, they're not just trying to offend me because they disagree with me, which in the internet is. I remember a cartoon I read some time ago. I forgot where, but it was just one panel. It was the guy on his computer, and then his wife, I think, called, "Oh, honey, come to bed," and he goes, "I can't go to bed. There's someone wrong on the internet."
Sure. So. As a writer, you do write about many subjects, and part of your goal is not only to educate, but also to draw attention to issues where people need to be sensitive, issues where people are suffering or are being hurt, and you're drawing attention to those concerns.
I try to. And I think when people know you, I think it's more honest, because I think film criticism, you have two sides to it, and on every review it has two sides. The objective side, on the lack of a better word, where you're discussing things related to the film language, the plot, the narrative, the decisions by the directors, and then that's how you filter it, which is your subjective side. So if the more your reader knows you personally, the more he can judge. For instance, my piece on Contact. There was this guy. I wrote something about religion. I won't go there. Okay. But and he wrote me. "Oh, if I knew you felt like that, I would never read anything by you." And I said, "Well." And then he said, for instance, "Your wonderful piece on Contact." And I said, "Well, so you didn't read my piece on Contact, because I discussed religion there." And then he reread it, and he said, "Oh, you're right. You are lame."
Yeah. Sure. It's about 11:30. We're going to open up the floor to questions. So if anyone has a question, please come to the microphone. Otherwise, we will continue with our very wonderful conversation. I'm just the moderator. You want me to talk about myself? Okay. So, in terms of my own experiences in writing, in the same way, I find films that I really enjoy talking about, films that I enjoy exploring, and often, for those of you who read my reviews, my reviews are less, or my essays are less about the movies than they are about something that the movies remind me of. Right. One of the discussions that we're having here is essentially this process of exchange, and especially cross-cultural exchange. And the position that I put in by way of my background, I often find myself compelled to present this conversation about how we look at the other side of the world. Right. I mean, I think it's very important that Michael is here, because we rarely ever think about the Philippines or Southeast Asia. Right. I think it's very important that Krishna is here, because we rarely think about Dubai except in terms of capitalism, but aside from, we don't think about it in terms of the people there. I mean, I don't know how many people know that there's a huge population of Indians in Dubai, a huge population. And so, because of my experiences also as an educator, I find myself often feeling compelled to make the point that when we look at people from another part of the world, We often look at ourselves according to the best of our ideals. We're America, we believe in freedom, we believe in liberation, and so forth and so on. And then we often look at another part of the world according to the worst of their stereotypes. You know, they oppress this, they subjugate that, so forth and so on. And often, because I'm often in the middle of those conversations, that's often, these days for 2010, what I've been exploring, in part just because that's what interests me, but in some ways because that's what I feel compelled to talk about. I mean, this is Monica, thank you for raising that question, because I think what's especially important in terms of our conversations here is that even though we're all a million miles away from each other, we've developed this bond that I'm sure many of you have noticed, this connection that we have with each other. When the tsunami hit, the first thought that came to my mind was, how's Michael? Is Michael okay? You know, suddenly there's this pause in his tweeting, and I wondered what happened to him. Some of our beloved correspondents, Grace and Sung Yong and Wael, are not here. All of us were worried about Wael. What's happening in Egypt? Right? And we're just waiting and waiting to find out just that he's okay. And with our new members here, you know, that are part of our, for lack of a better way to describe it, our circle of love, you know, I think what's very, very beneficial about the internet, beyond the conversation, is this connection, this heart-to-heart connection. And that I really appreciate, so thank you for raising the question.
Good morning. My worst experience at a film this year was Adjustment Bureau, and the best was King's Speech. Okay. So I go to a multiplex. How do you view the films that you write about? Do you go to a screening room? Do you watch videos, or do you go to the multiplex like the rest of us?
Mm-hmm. Gerardo, how do you go to the movies that you go to?
Oh, just the ones I review on DVD.
Oh, DVD.
Because the first times I tried to review movies for Roger, I got the idea that I could do them by memory because I know them so well. But really, when you sit and watch a DVD, all these things come into your mind without even trying. So yes, I think it's a lot better. It's better to sit down and see the movie and let it bring the memories to you.
Very nice. Anath, how do you watch?
I'm a partisan for seeing it on the screen if I can, but I do a lot of the other viewing too, Netflix and that little tiny screen. But I want to see the cinematography. I want to see the editing right up there big when I can.
And do you see it at the local multiplex, or?
Festivals, the multiplex,
everywhere.
Little art theater, cinemas, wherever.
Sure. Olivia, how do you watch your movies?
You know, I mean, it really depends on the movie. You know, if it's going to be one of those action-packed type summer blockbuster hits, and it's something of interest, then you know it might be worthwhile to see it on the big screen to capture all of those effects. Inception was definitely one of those things that I didn't want to watch at home. But, you know, we were behind on a few things when we were living in Europe last year, my husband and I, and we had to watch a lot of, you know, DVDs and whatnot on a smaller screen at home. When I do a review, I like to actually watch it on my computer so that I can stop and replay and rewind, and then toggle back to the Word document. But I don't know. I don't really have a preferred method. Sure. I think everything lends itself to something completely different. So.
Sure. Krishna, in Dubai, how do you watch the movies that you watch?
In Dubai, in the theaters, they mainly release the blockbusters. So if I go for those in the theaters. And the smaller movies, you have no choice but to watch them on DVD.
Okay, on DVD. Very nice. How about Michael?
I'll always see a movie if it's in theaters, but sometimes where I'm based, since I travel a lot, if I'm based in Malaysia, where the film distribution is just terrible. I mean, like this year's Oscars, they'll never show The Kids Are All Right because there's a homosexual couple in there. So in cases where you're in countries where it's not so free, like in Saudi, you have to be resourceful. But of course, if I had the choice, I would see it always in the theater.
Okay, yeah, same here. I didn't know whether I should be honest about that, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, once again, we're streaming.
Yeah, you need to be resourceful. There are some cases where you can't really find the movies anywhere. Like Waking Life, for example, I heard great things about it, but I couldn't find it anywhere, so there was no choice.
Okay, so you had to use alternate means. Absolutely.
I love how the euphemism, you have to be resourceful, alternate meanings, generic products.
Sure, yeah. We know what we're saying. Good. Pablo, where do you watch your movies? Do you watch them in screenings? Or?
Yeah, when I'm writing about the film that is going to be released that week, there's press screenings. And when I'm writing a piece on a film that's been already on DVD or Blu-ray, obviously that's where I watch it.
Okay, absolutely. And then Ali.
Well, I go to we have screenings, but the screenings are usually on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and I'm working. I've got my real life jobs. But when it comes to a film that I really want to see, I will see it then. Otherwise, I go to the multiplex, and I would go. On a Saturday, I'd go probably at 11 o'clock and then come out at 1 in the morning on Sunday. See about 5 films, just to make sure that I get that all over and done with and enjoy it very much. But otherwise, Turkey distribution, when it comes to DVD distribution, films that opening in DVD have become excellent in the past few years. I think we should all give a big round of applause to Paul Feeling, who's over here now, whose film we're about to see in 2 hours, My Dog Tulip. And that film, for example, came out in Turkey on DVD about 6 months ago, and I bought it and watched it twice. It's a fantastic film.
Must be pirated.
It's not. It's interestingly, it's not. It's most of the films. This is the interesting thing. Most films that will not be as successful in the multiplexes because we don't really have an art house scene in Turkey anymore. What they do is, rather than in cinematic release, they release it on DVD right away. And films that you would not believe, things, for example, Greenberg, you know, that was on DVD in Istanbul around the time that it opened in theaters in New York, which is, you know, I mean, they're trying to find the different ways of distribution, but yeah.
That happens a lot in Brazil too. Solitary Man with Michael Douglas. It was released on DVD in Brazil before it even was premiered here on theaters.
Well, that's my point. My Dog Tulip hasn't been released yet on DVD.
Oh.
It'll be released this month, I think.
Interesting. So My Dog Tulip has not been released on DVD, but we have seen it on DVD.
Right.
Okay.
But it's got it's an official release in Turkey. It's not a pirated copy. It's
You're
an
going
official.
to be arrested. Yeah, that's.
I'll find it for you.
Okay, well, we'll have to have a conversation about that outside. Yes. But did you have a question?
Yes. So now you've introduced me. Sandra's and mine next film, the film we're working on now, is targeted for the internet. We're going to self-distribute it. And it's a feature film, and that's where we want to go now. I am interested in your plans on following us and finding us there and writing about us. What are your, do you see the internet the way we filmmakers are beginning to see it as our next territory, our next venue, because everything is migrating to the internet. All of print press and TV and cable, everything is migrating now to the internet. It's a wonderful territory for independent films, and I'm sure all of you will be finding more and more independent films released in self-distribution. Have you given it any thought, and are you prepared to write about us and take us seriously there?
Ali, how would you answer that?
Absolutely.
To repeat the question, so we see this huge development of movies being self-distributed on the internet. How do we see that as?
Well, absolutely, not just self-distributed, but with sites like Fandor.com or Mubi.com, that might actually go there in the future, and there is a future for it. And self-distribution obviously is something else that offers a lot of potential. The key is, how are you going to make money from it? I mean, that's the important thing. And still on internet distribution, even with Netflix, we were talking about this last night. In fact, we're still not sure how to make sure that the filmmakers get what they deserve the way they used to with physical distribution. And I'm not sure, I don't have a magic answer for that, but that is going to be the key issue. For distribution itself, I think it's a fantastic medium for it, but you know, the actual money side of it, financial side of it is still tricky, and I'm not sure how that's going to happen.
Are you talking about my financial side of it or your financial side?
No, the filmmaker's financial side of it. So how you are going to get, make money from it, you know? I mean, that's going to be key, because, you know, these things aren't free. These things cost a lot of money, as you very well know. And then you have to make sure that, you know, you recoup that investment, because if you don't, you're just not going to do it again. And to do that, how internet is going to play into it, I'm still not sure. We've got from fandor.com, in fact, Mr. Kevin Lee here right in the front, my good friend, and you might want to have a chat with him, because he's very knowledgeable about all these things, and he might actually have a much better answer than I do.
All right.
Michael.
When it comes to who gets what cut, I can't answer that, but from a third world country point of view, most third world countries don't have great internet structure, so streaming is not a really viable way of delivering movies in third world countries, but that will improve during time. I talked about Netflix last year. I thought that was the great hope, but they still don't stream outside of North America, so until they can get that sorted out, I'm not sure how profitable it will be outside of the US. And let's face it, I mean, in third world countries where buying a DVD at a US price is something no one will consider because of lower standards of income. That's another thing that needs to be sorted out. If they can get it free because they can't afford it. Yeah. But in Western countries and industrialized countries that have the infrastructure, that have the access, I think it's great. Yeah.
So two very important responses here. One, on the filmmaker side, the affordability of continuing to make movies on the internet, and the other side, the access, especially for places like in the third world. Anath.
May I ask you a question though? How do you feel about those little screens? Your work seen in that way? It's not optimum.
The film we're working on now is because it's an animated film, of course. It's going to be an animated a graphic novel. We're using cartoon balloons for dialogue. We don't have to pay actors that way. We're talking about, and we don't have to. We're doing it with our own resources. We don't have to ask producers to pay for. And the owner, so. We have to watch out. We're constantly checking our work in progress on small screens, large screens. I still haven't worked out which typeface, for instance, I want to use, because it's very important. So those are all new problems for us, and it's very interesting. So, but as far as what you said, Ali, that it's expensive. It's not expensive at all to make a film for the internet. The most expensive part about releasing a film is the distribution, and all the people who come after us, after we've made the film, then they take a lot of our money. It's not because they don't deserve it. They're not robbing us. They're doing their job, distributing the film. And the owners of the theaters, they're taking the biggest cut, and they all deserve it. But the thing is, nothing comes down to us, independent filmmakers. And we see the internet as a source of money, because the money that will come trickling in from our app, for instance, and we plan to release our film, a feature film, release it in 3 or 4 minute segments. So it'll be like an installment program. And that'll be new again, and I think that people will pay $20 or $30 to get a fresh installment every week for the next half year. So those are, we haven't thought out that way.
We are now at, I'm sorry, were you making another point?
No.
Okay. Well, we're now at 11:45. Quick question?
Well, relatively.
Okay.
I approach this question as a film historian, and to discredit me even further, my period of most fascination is the period, the late silent and early sound period, the experimentation going on. In the United States, we're very fortunate to have a number of film festivals that are preservation-oriented. Cinecon in Los Angeles, which is wonderful. It's where last year a Charlie Chaplin film that had never been known to exist was shown. Cinevent in Columbus exists. And these showings are wonderful because they provide an opportunity for one to see films in an audience, as opposed to, thank God for Turner Classic Movies, but even films that Turner Classic Movies hasn't come across yet. So my question for you is, do you have the opportunity, and I should add that the reason why I ask this is because I find the most intelligent and most informative, at least for me, critics and reviewers are those who are really very knowledgeable about not just the classics, but also the whole range of the knowledge of film, and that's why Roger Ebert's films or film reviews are so useful. So my question for you is, in your countries, do you have opportunities to attend festivals that have the purpose of showing films that have not been discovered, have not been seen? For example, Gerardo, in Mexico, the rich tradition of Mexican film that in the 30s and 40s and into the 50s that are almost never shown anywhere else. Do you have those opportunities in your countries? That's my question.
Okay, thank you. Okay, very, very quickly, because you mentioned Gerardo, we'll do Gerardo, and we'll ask all the newbies. Gerardo, how do you answer that? Yes, no?
Actually those movies you talk about are called the golden cinema of Mexico, and you can see them all the time, but only on TV.
Okay, but only on TV.
Yes.
Olivia?
Yes.
Yes. Anath from California?
Yes.
Yeah, Krishna?
No, not at all.
No. And Pablo?
Kind of.
Kind of. Okay, thank you very much for your time. We hope you enjoyed it.